Episode 2 of WWE Unreal is titled The Push, and truth be told, it is one of my personal favorite episodes because we dive into the more in-time reality of what is currently happening in WWE. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump directly into the video. So yeah, WWE Unreal Episode 2 is titled The Push, and this episode to me is personally one of my favorites because I truthfully am a believer in this is what pro wrestling is. It's happening in time. In that exact moment, things are happening, and we truthfully see that. When Triple H is talking to Jey Uso in this episode, and he says, I'm going to put a rocket on you, because he sees that Jey Uso is one of the best talent right now, and the fans are getting behind him, and they're really feeling everything that he is doing. And in this episode, they really highlight that. They highlight the win of Jey Uso, where he goes on and wins the 2025 Royal Rumble, and again, all happening in real time, and it's so awesome to see in my eyes. Now, this episode isn't just about Jey Uso. In fact, we kind of dive a little bit deeper into the idea of how we get to John Cena's heel turn, and they don't necessarily give it to us right in this episode, but what they do is they show that press conference, the press conference of the 2025 Royal Rumble, obviously where Jey Uso pushed John Cena out. He goes to the back, he goes in, he says, you know, for everything that I've done with this company and for how many years that I've devoted to this company, I am adding myself into the Elimination Chamber because I believe that it is deserved and it is due to me. And you start to see the hints of John Cena, but in later episodes you find out some more, and we'll talk about that then. But it was really cool to see how all of this was brought to light. And also, another thing that they really highlighted was the creative process and like the tension that we seen in the creative process. You started to see some fingers kind of being pulled. You started seeing, where they're like, oh, who do you think should win the Royal Rumble? And everybody around says CM Punk, CM Punk, CM Punk, CM Punk, because that is the predictable idea. But you start to understand that WWE is trying to be unpredictable. They are trying to swing left while everybody is swinging right. And to me, that is so fun and exciting, and that's what makes WWE so special. But you start to see the pull kind of in creative. You start to see the dynamic of Triple H, Ed Koskey, and Bruce Pritchard, and you start to see Ed Koskey as one of those more manipulative minds of being like, oh, well, I think we should do it this way rather than this way. And then you start to see Michael Hayes and all the producers and how they are really brought into the forefront here, and I think that is awesome. And then, obviously, in this episode, you start to see how kayfabe is just strictly an illusion. Yes, kayfabe is just an illusion of the mind. And when I say that, I mean that as in they start to unpack the real-life side. Like, obviously, Jey Uso, like, he's talking as if he's not winning the Royal Rumble. And truth be told, they didn't necessarily say it, but I don't think he actually knew until that day that he was winning the Royal Rumble, because in the writer's room, they're having these conversations so late in the game. Like, it's not happening, 3 months prior to. No, these conversations are happening 11 days before the Royal Rumble, and that's when they're determining. Again, going back, everybody's throwing out CM Punk's name, and then ultimately it lands on Jey Uso because they have to have that conversation of, man, like, is there another way that we can get CM Punk into the main event of WrestleMania, which ultimately there was because of the storyline with Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. But at the end of the day, they had to ask themselves that question first. They needed to see, okay, can we get him there? Okay, what about John Cena? Because he is going to be a focal point of 2025. How can we get him to the main event? You start to see how they have that discussion of, well, we want Cody, we want John, we want them at WrestleMania, good guy versus good guy. The idea of the heel turn hadn't even really been exposed just yet, because John Cena could do some heelish things like he did at the Royal Rumble, but that didn't necessarily make him a heel, and none of us looked at him like that. We were all like, oh yeah, John Cena, he's done this 25 years. Like, oh yeah, this guy's right. Like, he does deserve to be in this position. But ultimately, we had to wait until later episodes to find out how that even came about, and we'll cover that in the next video. But yeah, kayfabe is just all an illusion that doesn't really exist anymore, and we started to see that in this episode. We also got to see a little bit about Chelsea Green and how she won the United States Championship, the Women's United States Championship, championship and how, she was actually one person who was predicted to win the Women's Royal Rumble because somebody in the writers' room was like, oh, what if we had 28 and 29 throw each other out, and then 30 would just be the winner, and it would be Chelsea Green. And that, to me, is actually a hilarious idea. I don't know about anybody else, but I love the idea of that. I think it's hilarious, and I don't know why WWE has truthfully never done anything like that. But Chelsea Green, she talked about how she brought her family out. She talked about the struggles of, not getting booked on the show and things of that nature. And she talked about the struggles of being a pro wrestler. I mean, these are things that we naturally see every single day. And then we got a little bit more in depth, and we got to see Charlotte and how she had to overcome, this year-long injury, and then to ultimately come back and win the Royal Rumble, which obviously going into later episodes, we will find out that it was for the better that Charlotte won, truth be told, in my personal opinion. I don't think there was a better option. And when you go back to that time in pro wrestling when we were all sitting there watching the Royal Rumble thinking like, man, here they go, they're having Charlotte win again. Like, no, there was always a reason. There was always something bigger at play than we actually thought. And I think that's like the big takeaway from this episode, is that everything is bigger than we actually make it seem. We only digest things on the surface, and we don't actually get them, the payoff that is, until later on, to where we have discussions like this where we're saying like, oh, well, that makes sense, and now I see why they did it. But they are having these conversations in real time. We're having them months in advance. They are having them in that moment, and that to me is just so insane. Like, to know that Jey Uso's fandom was going to skyrocket to the place that it was, nobody could have ever expected that. We could have the conversation and see that in real time, but we didn't actually know, because WWE, we looked at like, oh, they don't really trust Jey. But they're having the discussion about not trusting Jey later into the push, and it is just so insane in my eyes to see that we are all just, kind of puppets watching the puppet master, play the show. And it's so interesting to see, and it makes me love wrestling that much more. And once we dive into the next episode, which is titled The Heel Turn, we're going to see a lot more, and we're going to talk a lot more about everything that happened with John Cena and how that all came into light. So if you guys are enjoying this series, I hope you guys definitely make sure you're smashing that like button, and also make sure that you hit the subscribe button, because if you don't, you'll never get notified about a video that I post. And I'm here to tell you guys, I'm back on a roll, and we are posting all the time. And my prediction video is out right now, so you can go and check that out, because we have SummerSlam. If you're watching this video on Friday, SummerSlam is tomorrow, so go ahead and click right here and go watch those predictions for SummerSlam, because they're very interesting. But other than that, I don't really have anything for you guys. I appreciate your time. I'll be talking to you later. My name is Billy TKO. Peace out.
Lois, it's back!
I heard, Peter. I heard.
Kids, it's happening. Get your coats. This is what we practiced for.
Yeah! I love you, Dad.
I love you too, sweetheart. None of the past matters.